Our speaker today is Adam Leuenberg. He's the president and CEO of Postal Advocate, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the U.S. and Canada. We manage a portfolio of 176,000 pieces of mailing equipment and over 77,000 online postage users for the largest U.S. companies. Adam speaks and teaches nationally on mail savings and industry trends. He's a former industry co-chair of the Boston Postal Customer Council and Mail Systems Management Association. He is CMDSS and MDC certified. Adam is a featured writer for Mailing Systems Technology magazine, and he worked for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years. He was the director of national sales for Presort, tabletop inserters, addressing hardware, software, and green offerings, and he was one of the top 5 account managers nationally working with some of the nation's largest accounts. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Michaela. So today we get to talk about the USPS forced meter migration, and it's almost over. We're very excited this is almost over. So what we're going to cover today is the details of this change, what devices are impacted, creating visibility to what equipment needs to be changed to meet this migration requirement, what mail equipment options you have, right sizing strategies that can save you up to 80% regardless of this migration. When you're dealing with mail equipment, these right sizing strategies are the way to reduce costs. Enterprise online postage solutions. This is the fastest growth segment of the mailing industry, where these systems make sense. Planning and implementing for this migration, what happens after the deadline, and then ongoing visibility and control, because there are going to be future migration phases that you're going to have to work with. So this USPS forced meter migration. So the USPS is basically decertifying all of the former Information Based Indicia IBI compliant meters. The date was June 30th, 2024. We're obviously past that date. The post office has an exception period through the end of the year. New devices must be Intelligent Mail Indicia, IMI compliant, or will no longer be approved to use. So the mail machines run out of their, basically you have an exception period from June 30 to the end of the year where you can run out of compliance. Some vendors have exceptions that may have been requested that will take you through June 30th, 2025. It's typically for clients with remaining lease terms or in difficult circumstances. Current IBI devices, they need to be replaced. This isn't like a kit you can put into your existing meter. If you have the old style IBI meters, you have to physically replace them with a new machine. And it's a new meter, and if it's a bigger unit, it's a new meter and base. You can't put an IMI meter on an old base that supports an IBI meter. It just doesn't work. The USPS is doing this because they want to provide a higher level of security and visibility to the mail pieces. And they want meters constantly connected to the internet versus only at the time of refill. So the IBI meters, one of the things about them is you hit refill on them, they connected to the data center from the meter vendors, you loaded the postage or you downloaded the rate changes or you got a postage balance, and then they disconnected. The post office is saying, no, we don't want that anymore. We need constant connection. We need to pull the mail that you're doing. And the post office is doing this because they want to automate their operations. They want higher security specifications because there's a lot more threats that are happening. They want to validate the correct postage amounts that you applied. They want to issue refunds automatically through the devices versus having to fill out manual forms. And they want to have more control of what mail is going through their network. So these are the models that are impacted and the timelines for it. When you see 6/30/24, you could take that to 12/30, of this year because of the exceptions that people are getting. There's some production meters, like if you have a big folder and inserter with a console meter that is connected to it, those meters typically have till the end of 26. And then if you have large equipment, in a corporate mail room where you have, large automatic feed Pitney Bowes machines or Quadient machines, those machines typically, anything automatic feed from Quadient doesn't have to be replaced really until 2027. And then any of the big Connect Plus, SendPro P units from Pitney Bowes, you have until the end of 27 to replace as well. This chart is subject to change. This is what we know today. You should definitely go to your vendor for final confirmation. So what's happening after the deadline? So this is what we've heard. So non-compliant machines can be taken out of service by December 31st. Monthly mandatory connections to the meter vendors. So, and we'll go through some details of one of the main vendors. Some vendors have earlier cutoff dates to make sure that units get back in time. As an example, Pitney Bowes put a last refill date of September 29th. So we found this from the Pitney Bowes on the Pitney Bowes website. They're saying that, on July 1st, these meters have to be taken out of communication. August 1st, units were required to connect to their data center once a month. It used to be only every 90 to 120 days. They were forced to connect before an inspection was due. September 29th was the last date these meters could be refilled. And Pitney Bowes is saying the final meter withdrawal period is on December 1st. And so those meters, are supposed to not be able to print postage after December 1st and taken out of service or returned to Pitney Bowes by the 31st. Quadient has some different requirements, where they're not having all these types of, monthly requirements, but they're still supposed to be back by the 31st. And some of those meters may have exceptions through basically June 30th of 2025. But I would use the end of this year as a drop dead date. Make sure you're making your plans for the end of this year, because anything else should be based on an exception period. So the client challenges with this migration is the biggest is network connectivity. Not every company wants meters connected to their network. So the options are you can have IT, make sure that these meters can get through your firewall and get them connected to your network, or the meter vendors will have expensive mobile connector kits where they'll be charging you a subscription fee for a mobile connection. So think of it as like your mobile phone has a data subscription to it. Basically, the meter vendors can charge you for a data subscription where the meter stays connected, but you're getting that internet connectivity through the meter vendor, bypassing your IT and your own internal networks. The other client challenge is cost. The replacement units typically are more expensive than what you have today. So if you get the same level of equipment as you have today and you get the new IMI compliant devices, they're going to be more expensive. There have been lots of price increases over the last few years. Creating visibility. We work with a lot of organizations that have lots of locations scattered throughout the country. They don't know where all their mail equipment is. They've never been given any reports. Officers have gone on their own and done what they need. There's no visibility to what equipment people have and what needs to be replaced. Collecting the requirements for the new equipment. You got to make sure that you get equipment based on what the office needs are, bidding the cost between vendors, implementing the new units, returning the old units, and very important, making sure postage is refunded from the old units. If you change vendors or account numbers, like if you're getting, a Pitney Bowes to a Pitney Bowes meter or a Quadient to a Quadient meter, chances are they're using the same postage account. But if you're returning that meter and going to an online solution, or if you're going from Pitney to Quadient or vice versa, or to FP, the postage that's in those meters, you have to make sure gets back, and you have a documented process of that. We find millions of dollars of funds where people have not spent the time to get the postage back from returned or changed vendor meters, and it's something that needs to be managed. So creating visibility. These are the steps that we would do. You could do these things yourself. We're going to give you all the tools that we would do ourselves when we're gaining visibility for our clients. So the first is you need to obtain the account numbers for the equipment and the leases that you have throughout your offices. You need the equipment models to see if they match the list above, to see which units are compliant and which ones aren't, and the serial numbers. And you need an account number and a serial number to be able to create a login on the vendor's website. They ask for like 2 forms of identification to match. And these typically it's account number and serial number. You need that to be able to put your stuff onto pitneybowes.com or quadient.com or fp.com to be able to get access to the equipment, the postage usage, contract expiration dates, the mail volumes. And then from that, you need to figure out what features are needed. And that's usually done through interviews with the site themselves. So the methodology is see if you have any reports or agreements today that the mail vendors have provided. That's a great first step. Some companies have that. Some companies have never had those. We go to accounts payable and we have them do a search on the main mailing vendors' names. Luckily, there's only 3 or 4 vendors, so that's pretty easy to do. Pitney Bowes, Franca Type Estalia, FP, Quadient, and Quadient may be under a few different names. They may be under a name called Hassler, or it might be under a lease called Mail Finance. And so do a search on those names, request copies of invoices from specific line items from that accounts payable report, then create an account on the meter vendor's website and link all of those locations to the meter vendor's website, and then search the online account, because when you have all those locations linked, you can pull the postage usage, the contract expiration dates, and what equipment they have. And then call the meter vendors for any other visibility items needed. So we do this for clients. Like, this is the tools of how we would do it. We would do this for any client. If you have, over 50 locations, we do this as for a free or no obligation analysis that we do for clients. You can do it yourself from the way that we described it. It's just a little bit of work. But this is an important part, regardless of this migration, of having visibility to what equipment you have out there, because the equipment needs to be managed. If it's not managed with some sort of central visibility, I guarantee you, you're overspending. And I'll make that clear in the next few slides. So these are the options for mail equipment as you want to think about it. And as you're replacing this equipment, you have to think about what type of equipment you need for that application. And we're going to start on the right for the highest volume. Do you have equipment that has an automatic feeder, so you can take a pile of envelopes and stack it on the feeder and hit start, and it shoots them through? And do you have an internal weighing system, an internal scale, that as you put that pile of mail on the stacker, it weighs each piece, because there might be letters and flats and different weight breaks inside of it? Those are the highest volume machines. They cost $700 to $1,300 a month. There's a mid-level of that category of equipment that does the same basic functions, just it's not designed for slightly lower volume. They're $350 to $600 a month. Then there's just automatic feed machines, which doesn't have the internal weighing. You could stack up a pile of mail and it shoots it through, but they all have to be the same weight. And those are $170 to $300 a month. And then they have standalone meters where you feed them one by one through the machine, and those are $25 to $100 a month. And then you have online postage solutions that range from $10 to $30 a month. And those are sort of your options of mail equipment. Where the biggest growth opportunity we see for clients is an enterprise online postage. And that is having one web client that you allow access to through all of your locations. And that costs in the $1 to $10 per month, because you can have one fixed subscription that covers all of your offices, reducing the cost. So if you have lots of locations, this is a no-brainer as far as managing the postage spend, and we'll go into more detail on that. So let's talk about right sizing. We average for our clients 74% savings on right sizing, and it's because we do the following. Does the location need an internal weighing system or an automatic feeding system for their location? Just because they have it now, are they doing enough volume to justify it? The cost of the internal weighing is $200 to $300 a month increase over just the automatic feeder, and the automatic feeder is $100 to $200 a month increase over the hand-fed units. Can you live with lower capacity scales? The standard scales that come with machines are about 5 pounds. Sometimes the vendors will ask you, do you want a 30, 70, or 149-pound scale? And people say, oh, I'll take a 70-pound scale. Well, what they don't tell you is that adds $30 to $100 a month to your lease. You can go to Staples or your office supply store and you can buy a 150-pound electronic non-integrated scale for about $113. And you own it, and if it breaks, you get another one. There's no reason to spend $30 to $100 a month. Like, over a lease term, it could be in the multiple thousands of dollars, when you could just have a scale for the heavier stuff. Also, most of the time, organizations have bigger capacity scales already to handle UPS and FedEx. Do you need that scale built onto your mail machine? Are all the current features in your mail machine needed? Do you need all the mail accounting, custom weighing, conveyors, stackers, special services? They'll put that on an agreement, and they'll show you the detail of all those features, but they won't line item what each of those features costs. You need to look through the contracts that they're offering, seeing all those features and making sure, are they chargeable or is it an included item, to make sure you're not paying for things you don't need. Can online postage be an option for lower volume meters? With online postage, you get a 20% plus savings on parcels, and they can be expanded to UPS and FedEx processing. And if you have more than 10 locations or staff that work from home, can the enterprise online postage tools work for you? And all these tools reduce costs 40 to 90% and should be considered. Online postage. So let's just talk real quick about what it is. Basically, it's printing postage through the internet. So instead of you needing to have a physical postage meter you walk up to, you basically log onto a website and you print either sheets of stamps, or you could print individual denomination stamps, or you could print entire sheets of stamps. And this is the most common way to print postage in the United States. There's about 600,000 postage meters in the United States. There's about 1.5 million organizations using online postage to print postage in their offices. It's become sort of the majority way that small, low volume locations print postage. You can print either direct on stamp sheets, you could print directly onto the envelope. Not everybody knows how to feed an envelope to their printer. That's why we typically default people to the stamp sheets because they're simpler. You could have a dedicated printer, which we typically don't recommend. And if you're printing shipping labels, you can print shipping labels and basically print a 4x6 shipping label either through any local printer that you have. And you get basically 20 to 70% discounts on parcels through this. When you run parcel through your postage meter, you get a retail rate, the same rate you get at the postal counter. When you use an online postage tool, you get commercial rates, and the online postage tools typically have negotiated service agreements built into them that give extra discounts even on top of the commercial rate, which is why the rates are so much better. Okay, so it's inexpensive compared to postage machines, postage meters. It's cloud-based, so it can be accessed from any device, easy to deploy. You get visibility with a postage meter. All you know for most meters is that you filled the meter for $1,000. Most meters don't have elaborate accounting systems. You could certainly get accounting systems, but you're not going to have that across an enterprise, especially in low or mid-volume locations. With online postage, you know every single piece of mail, who ran it, what time they ran it, what class of mail they ran. So it typically reduces theft because they have to log into these platforms to use it. Some systems can do UPS and FedEx processing. And like I said, there's a significant postage savings that we talked about. So this is a weird concept that I just want you to think about. We work with organizations that have lots and lots of locations, anywhere between typically 30 to like 5,000 locations are our clients. And we're helping them manage their enterprise spends across their portfolio. So this is what we're seeing with clients. You know, in many cases, it's easier for them to send an overnight than a 69-cent letter. And that doesn't make any sense, but I want to explain the reasons why. In almost every company, they'll have a de facto parcel carrier that they'll use. They'll use either FedEx or they'll use UPS. Most organizations are going to have, with UPS, they're going to have a campus ship system, which is, going to ups.com or campusship.com, and anyone throughout that organization can ship a UPS package. They process the package, it goes to their cost center, and then at the end of the week or month, corporate gets a bill and they charge the transactions back. They have complete visibility to every single item, and then everyone has access in a standardized methodology of how you process those. And now compare that to mail. If that organization, some offices are going to have postage meters, some are going to use online postage, some are going to send users to the post office to buy stamps, which they're paying a premium for the postage, plus it's a liability to send someone to the post office. Some companies like banks and hospitals courier mail between facilities, spending $5 to $15 a pickup. There's no defined process across the organization of how it gets processed. Location determines based on if they have any technology to do it. Like, do they have a postage meter on site? And if they don't, and there's no visibility, there's no central visibility across the entire organization of how they process their mail and what their spends are, like there is with UPS or FedEx. This whole disjointed process is because nobody wants to pay for a mailing system at every single location. So the reason I'm using this direction to explain this concept is the future has changed. There's now enterprise postage platforms where we can have the UPS campus ship experience for mail. We can have one web platform that supports every location across the organization. Higher volume locations are typically going to keep postage machines. Lower mid-volume locations or people who work from home can have access to a cloud tool like they're used to with UPS and FedEx. And it's a fraction of the cost of the mail equipment that you can get rid of. And you get universal access. So the benefits of it are simplicity onboarding new users. You get to report on all locations and user activities from one central place. You can manage billing, subscription, supplies, postage. You can control the user access. Some systems have single sign-on, and single sign-on is really important because the UPS and campus ships and the FedEx.coms don't have this, and it's a problem. Organizations want to have it when people leave their organization, they want them automatically booted out of an platform, and when new employees come on, they want them automatically coming in. Single sign-on can control that. If you don't have single sign-on, then someone has to manually remove users and add users to the platform, which is, creates a liability because organizations typically don't do that in the frequency they need to. So platforms can be expanded to real rate shopping between UPS and FedEx, so the user can make time decisions about what's the best carrier and service level that they need. And they have certified mail capabilities far superior than what's in postage meters. Electronic return receipts for $1.48 savings. They can create a firm mail book that is a manifest you bring to the post office to rubber stamp. And then all signatures are automatically downloaded into these platforms. You can have visibility to every single item that was delivered without having to go manually track each one. So if you have more than 10 locations, these online postage platforms, enterprise online postage platforms, are game changers. Where we come into that is for clients that these enterprise platforms are great, but you need an administrator. You need one throat to choke on this. You can do it yourselves. We find a lot of the bigger clients don't have resources to do this, and they're happy to have us do it. So we do everything from defining the requirements, implementing the systems, training their users, onboarding them, managing their user access, and most importantly, case management. Every time they have a location has an issue, they need a way that they can get support. So we have a case management portal. They type in who they are, what their issue is, and then we basically work directly with that location to resolve the issue and then report on all the issues. You also need to monitor the usage, chargeback management. We have to make sure that there's cost centers linked to every transaction, and then it gets billed back. We have to quantify the savings and then expand and promote usage to the platform, because many large organizations don't want to do every single location at once. They want to do it in phases by region, division, group. So regardless of how you're going to do what type of technology you want, there's a little bit of migration planning and implementation you have to think about. So you need to create an inventory report to make sure you have the contract end dates of all your agreements and the spends for all the equipment. You want to document the postage spends by location. Without the postage spends, knowing that one site does $10 in the last year and another site does $100,000 in the last year, if you don't have that information, you can't properly right size the equipment. And the number one way you can save money in this category is by right sizing. And it's basically tying people's usage to the postage. Understanding the features you need for each location, comparing the pricing and features of multiple vendors, ordering the new solutions, validating the solutions are installed, removing the current systems, that the postage is recovered, and making sure all locations across your enterprise are covered by this change. So ongoing visibility and control, if this isn't a one-time thing, the only way to really effectively manage this category and to save money on it is to have an ongoing process to manage it. So, and that is keeping a master list or database of all of your equipment, knowing your contract terms. So regardless of whether it's about migration or not migration, this is just the only way that we have found that you can manage your portfolios effectively. You need to know when each lease expires so you can get to it 90 days before maybe an evergreen clause comes in, or before a sales rep or like a dialer from one of the vendors tries to get you to extend your agreements for long-term periods that may not be necessary. You need to know the spends, the invoices that you're paying to make sure they're right, the postage balances, and you need to know all this for the following reasons. You're going to have ongoing right-sizing needs. So mail volumes are going to continue to go down. You're going to need to continually right-size. Invoice validation. The vendors are not perfect billers. We've recovered $23 million from our clients, and the key is reviewing their invoices against the contracts or what they're supposed to be paying. Postage management. If you're not reviewing your invoices, you're missing postage accounts that need recovery. We've recovered $13 million for our clients in dormant postage. This money is sitting out there. This comes from the postage side. It comes from these areas. People are overfunding their meters. Their devices sitting with huge balances that are going to take years and years to get refunded. There are people that are pre-funding accounts. Some have excessive pre-funding accounts, sitting in the account that funds those meters. So it hasn't been pushed into the meter yet. It's just sitting out there in a prepaid or an advance account. Advance accounts are similar to pre-funding accounts. There may be large credit balances. If they're, or they're paying late fees, which are 18 to 22% interest, because it's important to get these balances paid in full. The state unclaimed funds offices. Pitney Bowes turns funds over to the state's unclaimed funds offices because Pitney Bowes operates as a bank, and as a bank, they're required to by law. The other meter vendors do not turn funds over to the states. The money sits at the United States Postal Service. Postal Service doesn't give any lists or notifications of where these funds are. We have a process of going back to find out where those devices were and getting those refunds, but this money is out there. And then USPS, USPS basically, it might not even be from a meter. It might be from a permanent account that you were funding, a postage due, business reply accounts, where there's money sitting at the USPS that, basically they don't put in any database for which you to search. Location support. You want to make sure your offices have the best mailing options and support available. You want to manage future migrations. We got 2 more phases of this in 26 and 27 for the rest of the IMI meters that aren't required to be updated this year. And then to offset USPS price increases. Rates have gone up. This is amazing. I don't know if you guys agree with this, but 30 to 64% over the last 3 years. Think about that for a second. 30 to 64%. That's 10 to 21% increases a year over the last 3 years. And the post office has just announced that starting this July, they're going to have 2 increases every year going forward. And they're doing this because mail volumes are decreasing, and they need to basically offset, their loss through rate increases. And so this is what we can expect for the future. Looking at cost in the mail category is going to become more important than ever. So what we do is we manage these mail spends for the largest organizations in the country. We've saved our clients over $87 million. We manage what we think is probably the largest fleet of mailing equipment and postage services in the world, about 176,000 pieces of equipment under management. And our average client has saved 74% with the work that we do, averaging about 1.8 million a client. So we have 228 years of mail industry experience on our team. We've built web tools that we put our clients' data onto, where they have access to, where we're pulling together all their mail equipment and their postage spends and their permits and their outsourced mail spends and their pre-sort services, so they can have one comprehensive database to manage their spends. And then we provide time savings assistance because we're taking care of a lot of the grunt work as the experts in the space, where most organizations, frankly, just don't have that level of expertise or individual that's responsible for the spend across the organization. Our clients are every industry. It doesn't matter what the industry, it just matters that there's disparate mail spends in different categories, whether it's equipment, permits, outsourced mail services. It's a much bigger category than people think. So for any client that has over, we'll say 20 locations or more, we will do a no-cost assessment for you. And the outcomes of this no-cost assessment is we'll give you a full equipment inventory, tell you all your contract details, your postage spends, what equipment needs to be migrated, and we'll create an optimized mail plan to maximize savings. You can go and implement this entire thing on your own, or hopefully we show you the value that we can do for you if we were to take it over for you. All we need for this analysis is a letter of authority that gives us the approval to work on your behalf to collect data. It doesn't give us the ability to, transact for you or commit you to anything. It just allows us to collect data on your behalf. If you have any mail equipment reports, current or historical, we ask for an accounts payable export of the mailing vendor names, and these are the main mailing vendor names that it might be under. We'll come back to you from that list and ask for a small group of PDF invoices that will need that detail. We'll create a login on the vendor's website so we can have that more granular detail that we talked about. If you'd like us to look at UPS or FedEx, we can look at that we just need 1 month of invoice detail, and meet with us to review the results. So this is, like I said, at no cost or obligation for any future services, but it's the only way that we found for clients to see that there's a bigger savings opportunity than they thought there was. Because we're going to pull the details of the fees that you're spending, how much postage is sitting in meters, the type of equipment, what is the renewal schedule, and what is an optimized plan in this category that many organizations overlook. And that is why we're saving clients 74%, is because they're not looking at it at this granular level of detail. So I want to thank you for coming to this call. We're going to open it up for questions. We do this type of educational seminar for multiple reasons. One is to educate the community on what things they need to know about. Throughout this, hopefully you feel you have the tools to do everything that we talked about on your own. If you don't want to do any of those steps, we can provide services for you that we think we can do better than anybody else. But regardless, it's meant for educational purposes for you to be able to see what you need to know to manage this category effectively. And we'll keep inviting you to more of these types of educational sessions that we have that come up throughout the year. So, Kayla, maybe we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Everybody, hope you enjoyed the presentation. While we're waiting for some questions to roll in, I just want to remind you there are two different ways you can ask questions. You can either type your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you to ask your question. I wanted to point to our social icons there. Obviously, like Adam said, we have these educational sessions every couple months, but if you want to get more frequent information from us, those are good places to go. Adam's email is also listed there in case you have any specific questions about anything that he talked about today. So I will go ahead and read the first question. So what happens if we do nothing?
So if you do nothing, your meter's just going to stop working. So you won't be able to add postage. You won't be able to, do inspections on it. It'll just become inoperable. So, I mean, that's, and I'd love to tell you, I can tell you the exact date that would happen. Like on December 1st, the Pitney Bowes meter won't work. But it may last a couple more weeks until like the next time you're forced to connect on that monthly connection, and then it will just not work anymore. The post office is very serious in wanting these devices back and getting this entire thing done to get them to the new standard.
Alrighty, our next question is, do you think the post office will make any last minute exceptions?
I think that they've made a last minute exception recently, pushing to, having some exception process to get people through June 30th of 2025 and as an exception basis. So I think that's about all that we're going to get on this. But I don't think that's a universal, everyone's just approved to that. I think there's a limited number of exceptions that are out there.
All right, another question. Do you see another forced meter migration happening in the future, making the new style meters out of date?
So two parts of this question. There still are, as we know, two more meter migration phases for this one, in 2026 and 2027. But that we know are going to happen. But I would say yes. Like I've been in this industry for 31 years now, and in that time, we've had, probably 7 or 8 different migrations that have happened of this sort of, maybe not at this scale, but where the technology is becoming outdated. There's going to be new requirements the post office will probably have in the next 5 or 7 years that these new devices we're putting in aren't compliant, or versions of these newer devices won't be able to meet, as the post office has more data demands inside the meters. So I would assume, you just have to sort of plan the fact that, mail equipment probably won't have more than a 10-year useful life. And if you go on that sort of expectation, you're probably safe. And the other piece is most leases that people do, or agreements that people do for mail equipment, is typically in the 3 to 5 year span anyway. So it really does cover you. From that perspective, some people buy equipment and hold on to it for very long periods of time. And then, I would probably say you shouldn't plan on more than 10 years of use, because at some point the post office will come up with a new standard that we couldn't have anticipated at this date.
Okay, well, it looks like that's all our questions. So I would like to thank everybody for joining us today, and please fill out the survey that will appear at the conclusion of the webinar, and be sure to check out our social media pages to find more helpful information from us on a more frequent basis. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.